In 1975, a 24-year-old engineer walked into a meeting room holding a strange box. He brought his company an invention that would change the world forever. It was a camera that didn't need film. The company's leadership looked at it with skepticism. Their answer left him stunned. "Don't tell anyone about this." 20 years later, that company filed for bankruptcy. Tens of thousands of people lost their jobs overnight. The name of that company was Kodak. How could a company that once owned the future die because of it? Before its collapse, Kodak was the undisputed king of the photography industry. The company was founded in 1888 by George Eastman. He had a simple but powerful vision: make taking photos something anyone could do. Kodak's famous slogan was, "You press the button, we do the rest." By the 1970s, Kodak controlled 90% of the film market in the United States, and nearly 85% of camera sales nationwide. 9 out of every 10 rolls of film sold carried the Kodak name. The brand became so massive it entered American culture itself. People started calling their most memorable moments a Kodak moment. Kodak wasn't just a company. It was the memory of an entire nation. To understand how painful Kodak's fall was, you have to understand how high they once stood. In 1976, Kodak held 90% of the United States film market, and nearly 85% of all cameras sold nationwide. No competitor came close to matching them. Kodak essentially defined the entire global photography industry. In the city of Rochester, Kodak wasn't just a company. They were the largest employer, with over 60,000 employees in a single city. 1 in every 4 residents of Rochester worked for Kodak. Schools, hospitals, and theaters across the city bore Kodak's sponsorship. In 1976, Kodak's revenue surpassed $10 billion. Their profits came from a nearly perfect business model: sell cameras cheap, then make high margins on film and processing. This was called the razor and blade model: sell the hardware cheap, profit from the consumables. This model gave Kodak a steady cash flow for decades. The Kodak brand ranked among the most valuable in the world. It stood alongside Coca-Cola, Disney, and General Electric. The phrase "Kodak moment" became part of everyday American language. No one thought a name like that could ever disappear. Kodak looked like an empire built to last forever. But at the exact moment they stood at their highest peak, the seeds of collapse had already been planted. That crack began inside one of Kodak's own laboratories. In 1975, a young engineer named Steven Sasson was given a seemingly simple task. He needed to find a use for the company's new electronic sensor technology. After months of work, Sasson created something that had never existed before: a camera weighing nearly 4 kilograms, the size of a toaster. It didn't use film. It captured images and stored them on a cassette tape. This was the world's first digital camera. Sasson brought his invention to demonstrate it to senior leadership. He took a photo and displayed it on a TV screen right in front of them. The room fell silent for a moment, stunned. But instead of excitement, their first reaction was fear. One manager asked bluntly, "Why would we tell anyone about this?" They didn't doubt the technology would succeed. On the contrary, they were afraid it would succeed too fast. Because if customers no longer needed to print photos, they'd no longer need Kodak's film. That film business was the massive profit engine feeding the entire company. Kodak's own internal reports had even accurately predicted when digital would take over. They knew the future was coming, and they chose to lock it in a box. The greatest invention in the company's history was filed away as internal research only. Kodak didn't die from a lack of vision. They died from fear of the very future they created. This is the question that has haunted the business world for decades. Why would a company that clearly saw the future still refuse to act? The answer lies in a concept called the innovator's dilemma. The paradox of innovation: the very success of the past becomes the chains of the future. For Kodak, the film business delivered incredibly high profit margins, almost unmatched anywhere. Meanwhile, early digital cameras lost money, with high production costs and thin margins. Executives were judged by quarterly profits, not a vision 20 years down the road. No one wanted to be the one who signed off on killing the cash flow feeding the whole company. Kodak's internal culture had been built for decades around chemistry and film. The digital team was treated as a small division, pushed to the sidelines. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, a rival was quietly doing things very differently. Fujifilm, Kodak's longtime rival, faced the exact same dilemma. But Fujifilm chose a far more aggressive path. They proactively diversified, investing in pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and digital technology. Fujifilm was willing to let its traditional film business shrink in exchange for long-term survival. Kodak, on the other hand, kept trying to protect its old business for as long as possible. By the time they truly entered the digital game, everything was fragmented and slow. Kodak launched a wave of digital products, but without a clear overall strategy. They spent billions of dollars, but arrived years behind names like Sony and Canon. Knowing the future ahead of time means nothing if you don't have the courage to step into it first. Entering the 2000s, the world was changing faster than Kodak could keep up with. Digital cameras kept getting cheaper, smaller, and easier to use. Then smartphones arrived, putting a camera in everyone's pocket. The demand for printing and developing film nearly vanished within just a few short years. Revenue from the film business, once Kodak's backbone, went into free fall. The company tried to pivot, releasing digital cameras and home photo printers. But every effort came after competitors and lacked a consistent strategy. Kodak's debt began piling up year after year. They sold off business units and cut staff repeatedly just to stay afloat. But cash kept flowing out faster than they could turn things around. On January 19, 2012, Kodak officially filed for bankruptcy protection. A name once ranked alongside Coca-Cola was now just a court filing. Kodak stock, once worth tens of dollars a share, dropped to just a few cents. Tens of thousands of employees worldwide lost their jobs during this period. In Rochester, the city that once depended on Kodak, the atmosphere felt frozen. The once bustling factory complexes now stood silent and abandoned. Many families with 3 generations working for Kodak no longer knew where to turn. Kodak sold off a massive number of patents just to raise money to pay debts. Among them were patents tied to the very digital technology they had once invented. An empire that once ruled an entire industry didn't collapse in a single day, it was worn away over 20 silent years. Many people hear Kodak's story and think, they were so stupid. But the truth is far more complicated than that. Kodak didn't lack vision. They lacked the courage to disrupt themselves. Try putting yourself in that position back in 1980. The film business is bringing in 90% of your company's profits. Would you dare sign off on killing that lifeline for an uncertain future? This isn't just a story about a camera company. This is a lesson for anyone succeeding with their current model. Success today can sometimes be the very thing that blinds you to tomorrow. So, which company today do you think is walking the same path Kodak once walked?